So you've started recording.
Yes, I have.
You've started recording.
Yes, I've started.
Okay, so we'll start by you introducing yourself. Tell us a little bit who is Helen, and we understand you're in Canada, Ottawa. Is it Ottawa or Orawa? Tell us a little bit who is Helen and what are you doing in Canada?
Okay, thank you, Jackie. My name is Hellen Dena. I'm the project lead for the Pan-African Plastics Project at Greenpeace Africa. This week, I'll be in Ottawa, Canada, to attend the INC4. INC4 is the fourth session of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee towards legally binding global instruments to curb plastic pollution. If you remember, in last November, we had INC3, which happened in Nairobi. Unfortunately, it ended in frustration and on a disappointing note because of, a few blocker countries who really were derailing the negotiations.
So, yeah, Greenpeace is known to be one of the champion organizations that is against plastic bans and plastic use of plastic. Sorry, and this week we had the government through NEMA banning the use of garbage plastic. And right now you're in Canada marking the World Earth Day. First of all, tell us the importance of World Earth Day. Why should countries? Because I understand like there are 193 countries in Canada, and what are you first discussing about? What is the importance of marking the earth, first of all? And this year you're talking about planet versus plastic. And Kenya has recently banned the use of garbage plastic bags.
So yeah, Earth Day is marked on every 22nd day of April, and this year's theme was Planet versus Plastics. And an interesting theme being in the context of, just coming a day before the start of the negotiations. Plastic has been shown to have disproportionate impacts on marginalized communities. Plastic impacts, 8.1 billion people on this planet. So it's good that the world is paying attention, and this could not have come at a better time, because if we continue in the same trajectory, then it is, predicted that plastic will triple by 2050. And so we're very happy to see, some of the action that the Kenyan government is taking, by banning the garbage plastic bags, and making a call that we need to use biodegradable bags. This is not the first time that Kenya has shown leadership in terms of, dealing with plastic pollution. In 2017, Kenya, went ahead and banned plastic carrier bags. And so I think this is, a good opportunity for Kenya to show leadership, but also as we applaud Kenya for this positive, step towards the right direction. We're also calling them to, go further and, look at investing in refill and reuse models, because the one problem with biodegradable bags, sometimes, what we call biodegradable, sorry, is not really biodegradable, and we end up replacing one problem with another. For instance, when they banned the plastic carrier bags, um, you know, places like the supermarkets, they introduce nets, which there are still plastics, and even the Uhuru bags, they go by that name, are not necessarily biodegradable. So I think a safe way of dealing with this is to look at how do we come up with alternatives that we can also encourage refill and reuse. So we don't necessarily even have to have, biodegradable bags, but have bins that we use a number of times. I think that will be an efficient way of dealing with the plastic problem.
I like the theme for this year's World Earth Day because it's planet versus plastic. And as much as the government, I'm not against the government banning or imposing the ban on garbage plastic. But then even the bin itself is made of plastic. So what are countries, as you're marking the World Earth Day, what are some of the strategies that countries are trying to bring out that people can emulate as a way of doing away completely with plastic? And do you think we will ever have a world where there is no plastic? Because almost everything that we use in our households contains plastic, from the kitchen to the garage to everywhere. You must get a plastic kind of thing.
Yes, I think the issue here is not all plastics. The issue is single-use plastics or problematic plastics. So there are those plastics that really we wouldn't be able to deal to like get rid of. For instance, you just mentioned in your kitchen, I'm sure you have, a bowl that is, made out of plastic, but that's not single use. Chances are you might use that for a number of years. And then when it's broken, for instance, I usually like reusing my broken stuff. So if I have a broken bucket, for instance, I can turn that into a pot where I plant some flowers, just in the garden or around the house. So you see that is different because when we look at single-use plastic, it means that it's plastic that you use once and discard, and that is where the biggest problem is because and some of them are really unnecessary. If you look at things like straws, for instance, I mean, you can enjoy your soda in a glass without having to use a straw. Things like the lollipop sticks, we don't really have to use a stick to enjoy our sweets. So it's those things that don't really, that are unnecessary and can be avoided because if we just continue producing more and more, we know that the industry has been pushing the narrative that plastic is convenient, it's cheap, but at what cost? Because it might be cheaper for them, but the cost on the environment, the cost on human health, the cost on marine ecosystem, because we've also seen that plastic sometimes disintegrates into microplastics, and these have been found to be in the drinking water, the bottled water, you know, um, the air that we breathe, even in our blood system. So it's a very it's a challenge that is not only on the environment, but it's also on people's health. And if it's not checked, then we are talking about all these impacts, becoming worse and worse. So we need to look at where, the problem is, the kind of plastics that are problematic, and see how do we reduce those to ultimately like just close the trap. Because like I mentioned, for things like straws, I think we can just say, let's ban all straws and you'll be fine. These are not things that, it's a do or die. So some of those things just need to be looked into and banned completely.
There's been that argument where most of the common mwananchi are like, as much as we are saying we need to put a ban on plastic materials, like if we start using these other kinds of materials that are not made from plastic, they will be expensive, they'll be spending a lot of money. Like, for instance, soda, if you get the takeaway one that is from plastic, it's way cheaper as compared to getting a bottled soda, a glass, because once you go to a shop, buy a glass, a bottle deal, a glass, you have to leave a deposit for you to be given the soda. But with the plastic one, it's a bit cheaper. So that they're like, if you do away with plastic, it's gonna be expensive for them in a way of accessing most of these commodities. What is your take on that?
It comes back to the priorities that industry but also government set, because for instance, if government will subsidize the alternatives, then the cost doesn't have to go to the consumer because if they put everything to the consumer, then definitely it's going to become expensive to that consumer. But going back to the example of the bottom, I think the good thing here is that when you check back that bottle, you still get back your deposit. So in a way, I don't see it as being expensive because at the end of the day, you have the option of taking it back. And I mean, you wouldn't want to have like 1,000 bottles in your house. So it also encourages you to be conscious us that, you know what, I don't have to keep this. If I take it back, then I get my money. And this, we used to do this a number of years ago. When I was in like primary school, we didn't have soda in a plastic bottle. So we used to go, it was like normal, and people had, yeah, people are just living with it. I think with the coming of plastic, people have embraced, like, the convenience, the cost in terms of people thinking that it's cheap. We might think that it is cheap, but look at, the cost in terms of, even cleaning up the environment, the cost in terms of human health. If you end up becoming sick because of all the microplastics that you have, consumed, at the end of the day, it still comes back to how would you be able to manage your health, which becomes expensive. So let's not look at the immediate convenience. Let's also look at the impacts that will come later.
Very interesting. And there's a question that is coming out now where someone is asking me, the World Earth Day is being marked this year for the 54th year. And now we are seeing a lot of countries are coming out, they are bringing up some new kinds of bans and new methodologies of doing away with plastic. So they're asking, why now? Because it's now 54 years. This thing started, I think, in the 1970s or something.
Mhm. I think that, like I said, that the world has come to a realization that, plastic pollution is a big crisis. It's, one of the, crises that is facing mankind. And if we continue on the same trajectory, then, the impacts that will be felt will be much bigger than what we are seeing right now. And I think that the world is also looking at a situation where, if we don't do anything now, the future generation will experience even worse impact, and not just plastic pollution, but also the climate change, because more than 99% of plastics come from fossil fuel. So the petrochemical industry has really been using this, because we are moving away from fossil fuel in the energy sector, and so they found the plastic industry as one that could lean on for continuity, really. So we are not only looking at a plastic pollution crisis, but also the climate crisis, because fossil fuels are the major drivers of of the climate crisis. And look at the impact that we are facing now. Right now, even in Kenya, we're experiencing more than normal rainfall. Just the other day, Dubai flooded. Like, Dubai International Airport was a mess, and people had to stay there for hours and hours. That was the largest amount of rainfall to be experienced in 75 years. So you're looking at this, and also just in Africa, previously we never used to experience, extreme weather events like, your cyclones and tsunamis. But look at what is happening now. There's, cyclone Freddy that happened a few years ago in the southern parts of Africa. So these events, the extreme weather events, are increasing, and it's because climate change is happening. So we need to look at all the causes, and one of these is the fossil fuel. And if we can cap that, and by capping fossil fuels, it means also reducing the plastic production, because if we cut production, or if we reduce production, then we will reduce the need for fossil fuel, and hence also mitigate, or rather, help us deal with the climate impacts.
Mhm. I know I've kept you for long, and I just have like three more questions to go. One question is that now, what happens to the manufacturers and the people who import these kinds of plastic bags? Because right, that means that people will lose jobs. Those people who work in the factories where they make plastic, and I also want you to talk about now sustainable waste management. As much as you're trying to say we are putting a ban, because here in Kenya they've given the most of the organizations up to 90 days to have done away with the plastic bags. What measures can be put in place to have like a sustainable waste management? You've talked about the is it micronutrients that goes into the water bodies? Talk
Like,
about how now people should manage their waste from the different kinds of waste, because most of the people I'm seeing who will be affected is people who are in big companies, let's say hospitals, how they'll segment their waste. There's the syringes, there's these kinds of wastes. So talk about sustainable waste management. And first of all, what happens to the manufacturers and importers of what plans do you have for these people, because they'll be jobless?
So this is where the government needs to sit down with the other stakeholders, like the manufacturers, just to see how they transition from the importation or the manufacturing of these bags towards the refillable and reusable item. Because you see, if we asking the government if they can, instead of like saying biodegradable, they haven't even given us the criteria for biodegradability. And that is one thing that Greenpeace is really like urging. Like, we want to see this criteria for biodegradability. We don't want to find ourselves in the same story where we don't have plastic, we have Uhuru back, but the challenges and the problems are the same. So if we are moving towards refillable and reusable, I mean, this is still a business opportunities for the manufacturers. Like, instead of importing the plastic garbage bags that they are doing now, they could also start making the reusable and refillable garbage back, because I mean they're in this business, so they also need
A
to.
picture of the. I'm trying to picture the reusable garbage, that kind of nini bag.
So
How does it
they,
look? Is it the woven one? How does it look like?
it's not even, it doesn't even have to be a bag, because a bag, it can be a bin, a container, because and that this is where now the waste segregation bit will come in, because at the moment in a house setup, every kind of waste is put in one bin. So you've got organic waste, but also like any other kind of waste. So, and I know Kenya is working on this, but I think what we need to do here is, first of all, ensure that even the people who are picking the waste are aware. Because look, a few years ago, I did try to segregate my waste just out of my own will. But then when they come to collect, they dump everything together, and then you're like, but I did separate so that you guys can take like the plastics, um
Yeah.
if you want to take it away, the garbage, and I mean the organic waste and all that. But it hasn't happened. So I think, even as going into your question about waste management, yeah, the regulation is there. Yes, it is good, but how do we ensure that this regulation translates to what actually happens on the ground? Because um you are given, when you used to have the bin liners, you're given one liner. Chances are you only have one bin, and even if you go ahead and try to segregate waste like I was doing, still when the people come to collect, they lump everything together, and they don't dump it. So it has to go from the regulation to the waste pickers or the waste sector, and even to like the normal the citizens. For instance, you need to the government needs to advise us, of you need to get like 3 bins. I mean, a good simple example could be like just NEMA to run a campaign on TV, on radio, on just how to figure out how to do this. I think that would be a quick way of like educating the public as well on how to do the waste segregation. And then when that happens, the waste speakers already are also aware, then we are able to move forward. For the hospital industry, I think there are things that they might not be able to get rid of, things like the syringes and all that. And these are the things we called the necessary, like this is the necessary plastic that we need. But you see, if we only deal with the necessary plastic, for instance, for the host for the health sector, then it's fine, because at the end of the day, me and you will not be contributing as much as we are now in terms of the plastic footprint, and then we will ultimately reduce the amount of waste that goes into the environment.
So, very well said. Now, does burning plastic make a dent in the bigger problem of climate change? Because it's not only plastic that causes climate change. And I know at Greenpeace you're advocates of the saving the planet. But does banning plastic make a dent? Even does it have any impact on saving or coming up with solutions to the effects of climate change?
It does because you see, if we ban plastic, it means the person who is producing will not have a market because ultimately what our call to governments is that we need to look at this at the source. We need to look at this. We need to deal with this from the source, and the source here is production. If we are able to reduce production, and for the global plastic treaty that the negotiation are ongoing now, our call is that we need to reduce plastic production by at least 75% come 2040. It might seem like a big really a big and very ambitious number, but this is according to science. This is the number that is required for us to stay within the 1.5 degrees and avoid any catastrophic impact of the climate crisis. And so, because most of these plastic comes from fossil fuel, if we are reducing that, it means we're also closing that tap, that fossil fuel tap. And so, one way of ensuring that we are not faced by catastrophic impacts of climate crisis will be to close that tap. But also, I want to say that banning alone is not enough in the sense that you see even across Africa, not just Kenya, a number of countries have banned plastics or have some regulations to regulate plastic. But the challenge here is when it comes to implementation. So you find that, and we've seen this in Kenya as well, where we have very good regulations, but then when it comes to implementation, we, we have some big problems. And some of these points out to the regional collaboration and coordination. For instance, we ban plastics in Kenya, but our neighboring countries have not. And so you find that also the issue of porous borders coming into also hampering the implementation. So beyond banning plastics, I think we need to go beyond that and see how do we ensure that there is effective implementation of those bans.
Very interesting. I was actually coming to that part where it's only Kenya that has banned the use of garbage plastic bags. And what could be your message, having met with or interacted with people from the 193 countries right now who are gathered in Canada? What could be your message to the world, first of all, and to the people in Kenya? Because most of the people have not even received the news in a good way. They're like, okay, fine, you're banning the garbage bags. Where do you expect us to put our garbage? Because in Kenya, most of the garbage is usually collected once a week. So where are they supposed to put their garbage? So what could be your message to the world and the Kenyans here? Like you've raised some very important issues that most of the people need to hear about.
I think for the world, really, I think my message to them would be we need to cut plastic production by all means because this is the only sure way of us dealing with the plastic pollution. Let's not just look at the really the downstream measures such as recycling. Recycling is not enough. If it was, then we wouldn't be having all these um, problems in the environment, but also impacting human health. And so as we gather here in Ottawa this week, I think it is a once in a generation opportunity for world governments to come together and see that they negotiating for a legally binding instrument that will deal with the plastic pollution. And the ultimate way of dealing with plastic pollution is for us to cut plastic production. And for, the people who are really against the ban, I think the one thing that I will give back to the Kenyan government is that, you know, having this regulation is super good. It's very good. It's the right step towards the environmental matters. But they need to go a step ahead and see and sit with different stakeholders and see how do we deal with this. For instance, the West speakers, they've been given 90 days, yes, but what are the steps that they will do to, for instance, be able to have those alternatives? So there's need to be that conversation that needs to happen. I'm sure NEMA will give more guidelines on the same. but the stakeholders also need to be brought on the table just for them also to buy in and to even give ideas. You might be surprised. Some of these manufacturers also, could be having, ideas on how to go about this. But the thing is, we need these plans. We need these plans, and we need to implement these plans, or else, we are doomed in terms of, the impact that this plastic pollution will have on the environment, but also on our health.
Yeah, very interesting. But you find that most of the governments, like I've attended most of these conferences, and you find like, okay, fine, the ministers are there, they attend, and it's usually like a talking shop. They get into the meeting, closed door meeting, and whatever they discuss there ends there. Like we don't see anything that any outcome from like last year. I guess there was the World Earth Day that happened last year. What are some of the resolutions that you can come out and say, yes, this was discussed and this is what has been effected so far? Probably there was that ban on plastic bags. But then now this year, what are some of the resolutions that you are hoping to come out with in these 7 days that you're in Canada?
So for these 7 days, really, during the negotiations, we are hoping that the negotiations, the talks will move forward. At INC3, really, we didn't see a lot of progress because we had a zero draft then, and we wanted to, uh, or rather, we hoped that we would actually get a mandate for the chair to come up with a first draft. That didn't happen. Instead, countries added more tests, and we came up, the chair came up with a revised zero draft, which is even more bloated. And that is now the basis of the negotiations now. So our hope is that after INC4, at least we will be able to have the mandate to come up with the first draft of the treaty. But also between now and INC5, also we hope that we'll get a mandate for intersessional work, which in simple terms is like looking at the nitty-gritties of what the treaty will be about. And because not everything can be discussed in the 7 days that the ministers, or rather the different focal points or member states will be here. And so that is really our hope. But also, the countries or member states come with different interests, their own interests. And there are those who are really here to like ensure that we don't talk about production, for instance. They only want to talk about, downstream measures, saying, oh, it is only a waste problem. But really, where is that waste coming from? Because we need to look at, the source of that waste. And the source of this waste is actually the production itself. So the UNEA 514 resolution that was given during UNEA 5.2 was to look at an instrument that will have a comprehensive approach, but also look at an entire life cycle. And an entire life cycle of plastic would start from, extraction to, the production, use, disposal. So the waste is only a part of that life cycle, and that is where um member states are having a bit of divergent views when it comes to, how do we look at the instrument. So that aspect might lead to, the process of the negotiation being derailed. But coming back to your question about all these talks and blah blah blah, and at the end of the day it just stops. I completely agree with you, and that has been one of our call as Greenpeace Africa, that enough with the talks. We need to see more concrete action, and not
True.
just here but also even like the climate talks. You've seen that for 20 years we've been going round in circles, and not really, people commit, they go back home, they
Nothing
continue
happened.
business as usual, like there's nothing that really is happening. So yeah, enough of the talks. We just need action. And that's one of our call as Africa, that we need to see action. Yes. Talk is good, yes, but we have talked enough. We now need to act, because the planet is not waiting for us. Yeah.
Yeah. So what message would you have for the general public? Because we need people who are vocal like Greenpeace, who come out, and if something is not workable, you just come out and say it. What message do you have for people, and what should we expect from Greenpeace uh, at the end of all this, should we expect campaigns? Because I'm looking for for a production job to do the campaigns for you here in the county where I am at. So what should you
No,
expect from this?
so for the people, really, for the citizens, we our call is for them to, hold their leaders accountable, because at the end of the day, this is for us, this is for our children, this is for our children's children. We want to live a better future, and it is upon us to act so that when our children will not come and blame us and say, but they never did anything. We've seen now that children are also, taking action. Like we have the school strike, and youth and children have been really at the forefront of this. It's because they're seeing that the elders are not really doing anything here. And if they're doing, then it's not enough. We also need to speak for our own generation. So we need to really, push our governments to do it right. I know we might have a whole lot of other things, be it economy, but let environment be part of that. But also on our own, we could also, choose the way we do things. For instance, there are, like very simple things that you could do and would help you, or rather would help the planet. Things like, choosing not to use a plastic water bottle in like in your everyday life. Yeah.
Yeah,
Carry a refillable bottles. You don't have to buy a plastic bottle every now and then. Carry your refillable bottles.
yeah,
Reduce your plastic footprint. Every time you go to the market, carry a reusable, bag or something. I'm sure you have a cloth bag or a kiondo or a basket that you can go to the market with. I mean, that way you are also in your own way. When you have to enjoy your soda, you don't have to use a straw. Like just ask for a glass or something like that. So it's just what those simple things that we can do on our own, um, you know, actions, and help us to reduce the footprint. But I think the bigger responsibility here lies with government, lies with big industry who are like the biggest polluters. So we need to call those ones out, because at the end of the day, the environment, or the impacts of this pollution impacts everyone.
interesting. Thank you so much, Helen, for making time. I'll be looking up for you. When is the NC ending, so that I can look for you? You give us the resolutions. We are putting them down. We will also put you to account next year. You
Uh,
said this is gonna happen. We are still waiting.
It's on 29th, 29th, very late on 29th. So if you have to look for me, maybe on 30th.
I look for you on 30th, so that you tell us this is what you've decided and agreed. And then next year, during the 55th World Earth Day, we will look up for you, probably if you'll still be there.
Ah,
So
inshallah,
thank you so much. Eh?
inshallah.
Sawa sawa, we really appreciate. Na hiyo campaign come through, by the way. Nataka kufanya, niko na idea ya ku stop the use of plastic bags.
Oh, okay. We should talk sometime.
Yes, I will look for you. So thank you so much. I really appreciate for your time.
Thank you too. I think I will get the recording in a few